Hey everybody, Questwise here. It is New Year's Eve 2018. We're wrapping this up. We're wrapping this year up. I've seen a fair few other people on YouTube talk about their 2019 gaming resolutions, and I kind of want to do that in this video, but at the same time, I want to talk about nostalgia. I want to go back in time a little bit as well too, and talk about few things that I've been thinking about over the past couple of days. Last night I went to a concert with my wife, and we saw one of my favorite sort of local Michigan bands. They're called Wayland, and they just wrote a new song, which I'll post a link to down below. Unfortunately, the video that I'm going to post down below was not from the show I saw, but from a previous show that they had done. But the song is still the same, and the performance is amazing. The song is called Indiana Jones, and it's just that. It's a song about sort of the things that we don't ever want to let go of from our childhood, especially for people like myself. I'm 43 years old, so I was born in 1975. I grew up through the 80s, through the 90s, and it was those things that I latched onto in the 80s that really sort of secured who I am as a person today and as a gamer today. And I want to talk about sort of retro gaming as well as like OSR RPGs, if you will oblige me today. So for my New Year's resolution, one of the things I want to do is I want to delve deeper into the OSR movement. Now, I've been a part of the OSR movement for quite a while, working with Bloat Games and Eric over there, and Josh and some of the other guys, and creating, some things, Dark Places and Demigorgons, some supplements and stuff for that, as well as a few other games. They're heavily influenced by the OSR. They're heavily influenced by this retro sort of craze that's going on right now. And there are tons of other, we live in a golden age of role-playing games, folks. There are tons of other indie role-playing creators out there who are doing OSR products. And if you want to sort of delve back into those glory days as they were, there's a lot of chances out there for you today. I'm going to be talking about two games in particular today that really capture that feel for me. Some of the younger viewers out there are not going to really understand what I'm talking about when it comes to sort of like growing up in the 80s and what it was like in those time periods and the things that we had that sort of cemented who we are today. That being some of like the music we've listened to, the TV shows, the cartoons, the games we played, things that sort of cemented who we are as gamers today. And what made us the kinds of people that we are today, and the ways that we like to play games. When I talk about retro role-playing, when I talk about OSR gaming, I'm talking about the birth of Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, in the early, mid 70s or so, and that style of gaming, that new idea of being able to play a character in a world, and all the craziness that came out after it. We're talking like Tunnels and Trolls, and we're talking about like Marvel superheroes, and all these different games. I became very entrenched into the gaming hobby with Palladium books, in that I played Heroes Unlimited, one of the first games I ever played, and I was a huge comic book X-Men fan at the time, and Spawn and Spider-Man, and having been taught how to play Heroes Unlimited, be able to take those stories, those comic books that I love, and make them come to life in my own imagination, and write my own stories with groups of my friends, where we were creating our own heroes, was utterly fascinating to me. It blew my mind. It changed forever who I was. And it's funny because I always tell my own children that 14 is a magical age for you. And for them, and some of them it wasn't, and some of them it's a different age. But for me, 14 was that age. That was that magical time when I discovered the things that cemented what I love today. And those things, it grew out from there. Some of those things still stick with me today. I love classic cartoons. I love superheroes. I love those kind of classic tropes of the 80s and 90s, and the music and that style of stuff, even as far back as the 70s. I love breaking out a classic role, a classic piece of D&D history and playing those kinds of things. But when I think back, those were magical times for me as a child, being introduced to those things. And it's different for everybody. And that's the great thing about nostalgia, is that everybody has a nostalgic thing. There's that one point in your life where something just cements for you. Something just kind of coalesces for you in as far as a hobby, as far as a desire, a passion for you to sort of grip onto. And for most of my fans out there, I think it's going to be role-playing as that hobby. But wherever you started, whether, for me, it was 2nd edition D&D. Like, after Palladium, I came home. You've all heard the story before. 2nd edition D&D was the one that kind of cemented everything for me from that point on. And, that still has a very fond place in my heart. But I love the earlier iterations and stuff as well, too. And I just love the time period of the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, that kind of thing. The music, the fashion, all of that kind of stuff. The games I want to talk about today, 2 games in particular that I want to explore even more in 2019. The first one of those is Dark Places and Demigorgons. Now, when I say I want to explore more of this in 2019, what I mean is that because I've been working with Bloat Games, I want to write more stuff for this. I want to put out more content for this kind of stuff for you, the fans. One of the great things that Eric and Josh have been doing at Bloat Games is that you can tell in this product and all the other products that they've put out that they love this time period. They love this sort of 80s retro kind of feel, right? We're talking about like Goonies and Stranger Things, and that's the kind of passion that comes through in this product. And so I've been deeply blessed and super excited to be a part of the Bloat Games team and to be able to put out things for you like the Vampire Sourcebook and the Werewolf Sourcebook and an upcoming product which I'm going to debut today. It's coming out in Kickstarter very, very soon. But in 2019, I want to explore more of this. I want to dive into this more. I want to write more content for this kind of stuff for you, the fans out there. One of the other great things that I love about this game, and I love about this company, and I love about these guys, is that their passion shines through in the fact that they know that not everybody who's going to play this game was even born in the 80s or the 90s, right? There's such a huge group of new role players out there on the market right now with the advent of how well Dungeons & Dragons is doing. That what they've done is that in some of their supplements, and this one in particular as well too, they give you reference to those things to make that game feel authentic, right? To make it feel like you're playing in the 80s. They've given you TV shows. They've given to watch. Go back into Netflix or Hulu and check out these cool TV shows. They've given you lists of music and bands to listen to have playing in the background and kind of get you in the mood for those things. They give you words and phrases that were used in the 80s, like gnarly and dude and those kind of things. And they took enough time that there's so many charts in these books and some of the supplements as well too. Especially like and I don't have one out currently. I have one on the shelf behind me, but to dig it out would be kind of rude to turn my back to you right now. But in the players and GM's guide for Dark Places and Demogorgons, there is a wealth of different things. How much things cost in the 80s. Cassette tapes, VCRs, boom boxes, t-shirts, that kind of stuff. For those people who either don't remember, what it was like in the 80s, or people who hadn't even been born yet, so that they can still enjoy these things as well, too. I can't wait to show you what 2019 has in store for Dark Places and Demogorgons. There's a wealth of great new stuff coming out for this game, and there's already a bunch of great stuff out there as well too. So shameless plug, go check out Dark Places and Demigorgons if you haven't, and if you do own this, go out and buy the rest of the stuff. It's all available in PDF and or print on demand stuff. I've been writing a zine that's based on this as well too. Actually all of Bloat Game, my zine kind of covers everything Bloat Games, but each one of them has something for Dark Places and Demigorgons. Check it out. The second game I want to talk about is and I just newly acquired this. It's called Kids on Bikes. This is by Renegade Game Studios. This book is really small. It's really tiny. But again, same concept as Dark Places and Demigorgons, right? You're playing 80s kids on bikes, or 90s or whatever, that kind of time period. What I think that this game has that's really, really unique in such a small little package is that the way the game is constructed. If you want depth to a storytelling game, you want depth to your 80s sort of retro idea, Dark Places and Demigorgons is the way to go. This has the depth and the amount of content stuff that will just fill years and years and years of role-playing campaigns. If you want a little bit of like what this game does really, really well is not in depth, but in width, if that makes sense. The thing I found really fascinating about this game is that the character creation process, the world creation process, is genius, is really well done. And kudos to these guys who put this together, because when you're building a character, when you're creating a character for this, you have some options. You can be a kid, you can be a teenager, you can be an adult. But when you're done creating your character, you must share your character with the other players, and you must have some sort of interaction or relationship with the other characters at the table. This instantly creates that sort of, it gets rid of that awkward situation of like, why would this guy and this girl and this dude all be working together? What is their common purpose? So Reddit character creation, that knocks that out of the way, right? You're sort of forced to make some kind of connection, whether it be you hate this kid or you love this girl, or this dude over here is your high school teacher, those kind of things. You're making connections right off the bat. And I think that's a great, great concept. The thing with that is, though, it can be used with any other role-playing game, right? You can use it with Dungeons and Dragons. You could use it with Dark Places and Demigorgons. So those kinds of things are really, really interesting. The other thing that this game does really well, and I think that this is something that every game should do, is right up front. And this is kind of sort of a social contract thing that I think a lot of people sort of like forget about. But this is explicitly put right here, and it's the very first, it's like page number 3. It's called Setting Boundaries. I think this is something that more role-playing games, it's just a one-page thing, but I think that, I guess it's a couple pages, but the idea is that when you sit down at a table, you should discuss with your players what it is, the kind of game that is that you want to play. Not so much the setting, but how dark, how goofy, how comical, how action-oriented you want the game. Because in today's society, you want to make sure everybody's comfortable while playing a game. And if you go into some kind of area that's a little bit risque or maybe a little bit on the dark side, you could offend some players. You could really, and beyond offending, there might be things that people are dealing with that maybe they just don't want to explicitly, go into in a role-playing game. So when you sit down, there's that social contract of saying, okay, where are our boundaries? What are we going to, how far can we go? How serious do we want to take this game? Or how goofy do we want to go? Do we want it to be like more like the 70s show, kind of thing, where it's over the top, humorous, kind of thing? Do we want to talk about drug abuse? Do we want to talk about sexuality? How far do we want to go? And I think that's a wonderful thing to have in any role-playing game. Now, in the past, it's always been sort of a social contract thing. You kind of just did it anyway, especially at conventions. I would always sit down with the group of players, because most of them I didn't know, and be like, okay, look, here's what my game's about. If you want to leave, I understand, but this is what the scenario is going to kind of curtail. If that doesn't please you, I will not be offended if you walk away at this point. But those are the kind of things, especially when you're playing with a group of people that are your friends. You might want to sit down before the beginning of a campaign and be like, okay, where do we want to go with this, and what that kind of thing is. So I think that's genius on the part of this game. I think that they do really, really well. Also, world building in this is a collaborative effort. In that, you're sort of building stuff as a group, and the players have a vested interest in creating the world, as it were, and sort of the neighborhood that you're playing in, and that kind of stuff. The other thing that this game does, now Bloat Games, in Dark Places and Demogorgons, gives you the option to do things like Stranger Things, like Eleven, right? She has these crazy psychic abilities. Um, and there are options to play those kinds of things in this game, and a lot more as well, too. Psychic, magic users, all sorts of stuff. This is like a toolbox, actually. What's great about Dark Places and Demogorgons is that it has that toolbox access thing where you can go as light or as heavy as you want, right? If you want to just do a straight up kids that are not over 14 years of age and are going on an adventure and there's no supernatural things, but there might be a murder or some kind of thing going on, you can do that. If you wanted to go crazy Lost Boys city full of vampires, or you wanted to do like Charmed, that kind of stuff where everybody has magical abilities, you can do that in here. And that's what's great about Dark Places and Demogorgons, is that it's a very toolbox type of a setting, and you can add or subtract as much stuff as you want. Kids on bikes, not so much. You are choosing a kid, a teenager, or an adult, and you're all just straight up thing. They do have an option to play they call them powered characters in this, which would be sort of your psychic as well. And what's interesting about this fact is that it's assuming that everybody else is playing a normal human being. And if you want to play a powered character, the powered character is sort of created as a group. And that character gets, you get to choose every session that character gets to be played by somebody else. So nobody gets overshadowed. Everybody gets a chance to play this powered character and stuff as well too. It's cool, but it doesn't give you as much depth in this choice as Dark Places and Demogorgons, being more of a toolbox type setting. Other than that, the book is fairly short. There are no creatures in this. There's no like bestiary or anything like that, because those are meant to be things. It's got a very sort of Lovecraftian feel in the fact that the things that you're going to encounter as a kid, as a normal person, you'll never be able to defeat, and that you have to find a way to eradicate it some other way. You're not going to be able to stand toe-to-toe with a vampire or a werewolf or some kind of crazy color out of space kind of creature. So in that respect, those things are not statted up in here. This uses a very simple system, a dice mechanic system, which is easy to teach people within like 5 minutes, which is another great game. Very, very rules light. This is very OSR. If you've played any D20 games before in the past, it is based on old school D&D and is easy to pick up if you played those kinds of things before. There's options for skills, there's options for things, and there's also just a ton of kick-ass monsters. Speaking of monsters, segue into the shameless plug. January 15th, that's coming up in literally 15 days, folks. As the filming of this video, it is New Year's Eve 2018. January 15th, 2019, this goes up in Kickstarter, the Cryptid Manual for Dark Places and Demigorgons. This is a creation. I co-wrote this with Josh Palmer over at Bloat Games. All the artwork is done by Runehammer, so if you love Runehammer stuff, you are going to love this book, okay? This is a collection of monsters. It is everything that you've loved and things that you didn't even know you loved. All cryptid, all awesome, all fantastic. Shameless plug for this book. It's going to be amazing. Above the fact of just getting a buttload of cool new monsters to add to your Dark Places and Demigorgons game, because it's an OSR-based product, this will work with any other old-school game that you want to play. Labyrinth Lord, Hero's Journey, whatever it is is your favorite OSR kind of inspired game, this will work with a little bit of tweaking, but for the most part, it will work with those things. It uses that same basic rules. In addition to that, you get a bunch of tables in the back to modify the different creatures or create your own kind of creatures. There's also rules for morale in here, which is a new addition, is a new stat that you can add to Dark Places and Demigorgons. The idea that when you are faced with some kind of horrific monster that your mind just can't seem to comprehend, you might have to take a morale test, and you might fail, and you might run away, and you might get horribly maimed and eaten. But there's lots of great stuff in there. There's templates for adding vampiric powers to any of these kinds of monsters, to radioactive types of things, to just all dire templates, all sorts of stuff. And I will show some of the artwork up in here as well too. But folks, you are not going to want to miss this. If you're an OSR fan at all, I had an amazing time working with Josh Palmer and Eric Bloat putting this thing together. This book is one of them. This is one of the favorite projects I've worked on so far. It is beautifully rendered. It is awesomely done. It is the coolest monster manual I have ever seen or had a chance to work on. So a couple of things. 2019, my plan is to look backwards. I want to do more OSR stuff. I want to do more retro gaming. And I think, hopefully, I'm putting together a team right now, a local team. And I can't really announce anything yet because we haven't we've secured a location and we've secured some folks, but I need to put a few more keys and locks before I can actually announce the full project. But I'm hoping to have a very old school experience coming for you in 2019 within a few months. Some awesomeness that you'll be able to enjoy on YouTube that'll sort of give you that feel of retro role-playing and nostalgic feeling for people my age in particular. But until next time, I'm Questwise, and I'm out.